To date, 23 states have allowed the death penalty, have outlawed the death penalty, but long sentences remain the norm despite evidence that they have limited impact on deterring future crimes. Death penalty cases and frequent exonerations make the headlines, but the problem of overrepresentation of non-white offenders in our prisons, the over-sentencing of non-white offenders that mean many aging prisoners will die before they get a parole hearing are among justice issues that have not been highlighted or effectively tackled. Because prison results in accelerated aging, anyone over 55 in prison is considered elderly. Long sentences given in the 80s and 90s mean life sentences could quadruple during those periods. And most sentences that sentenced then are now over 55 or getting to be 55 shortly. These people are a significant factor in the graying of the prison population, which is a topic I think we can all, relate to, since I look out in this congregation and we're mostly graying other than Kyle. Many people 65 and older in prison have already served more than 10 years, and about a third in this age group are serving a life or death sentence and likely to die in prison, despite that studies show that older offenders are very unlikely to commit crimes after release. It's well known there is a stark racial inequity in sentencing. The U.S. Sentencing Commission reported men of color who commit the same crimes received federal prison sentences typically 20% longer than those given to white men. And Black and Latinx people are just plain overrepresented. Black people constitute 48% of the prison population, but are just 15% of New York State's population. Let's try to put aside our fears about crime, which are real this morning, and think about the people in prison who rehabilitated themselves, but even in old age might not get a chance to demonstrate that to a parole board. When do we really think they should be deemed worthy? And I guess I'd like to ask very quickly, that we have a small group here, do you know anybody who is in prison right now?
Yes.
One person, two people, all right.
Yes.
More than I expected. And somebody's answering online.
Yes.
And do you know anybody who's formerly incarcerated? Yes. There we go, a few hands up. And I always think about the fact that there may be people within my immediate circle who actually are formerly incarcerated, but I just don't know it because that's a fact that they hide. So moving on now, shuffling my papers, it's time for our chalice lighting. And I invite you to join me now in lighting our chalice. You can find the words in our order of service. We light this chalice in the search for truth and the spirit of love. We unite in worship and fellowship. As an extension of lighting our chalice, I'm going to take a moment to light candles for some of those who have recently been affected by police brutality, knowing that we cannot cover all of the names of those affected. We light a candle for the life of Brandon LeMange. We light a candle for the life of Kyle Bozeman III. We light a candle for the life of Everett Rand. May these lights be a symbol of our commitment to continue the work of racial justice and to proclaim that Black lives matter. Please join us now in singing hymn number 1060, called As We Sing of Hope and Joy, and it's in your gray hymnal. that dark gray hymnal. Oh, is it in the teal? Okay, very good. So 1060, yes.
You'll be looking a long time.
Sorry about that.
As we sing of hope and joy today, some know only anguish and despair. How can we lift our voices in this way, while some have pain and misery to spare? If a crumbling world we would renew, we must sing no ordinary song. Peals from a noisy gong will never do. In every breath compassion must belong. Let this song our greatest hopes contain. Let their love a wealth and trumpets due. Roost over every heartbeat rich refrain, in harmony from peaceful cities view. Sing of joy while hammering each nail. Sing of hope while pulling every weed. So shall we sing together and prevail. May every Alleluia let us sing.
We invite you now to share your joys and sorrows. If you're visiting for the first time, this is a good time to introduce yourself. For those gathering in person, we invite you to raise your hand and then stand where you're seated. I'll give you the microphone to share your joy or sorrow. We invite you to share what is in your heart. For those online, we invite you to type into the chat your joys and sorrows so that Ben can read them aloud. Please share what is in your heart. Yes, you have one? Oh, okay, no, in the back. We're going to go in the back first.
Hi, I'm Juliet. I'm going to be becoming a member of this church. Even though I've been coming here for 7 years, I'm not a member yet, but I will be. My other joy is that I really am so happy that we're doing this service, because to me, love and community is action, not just contemplation. So it's really important for me, and I think for this congregation, to take actions, hear this message, and then actively build a more compassionate world. And I'm just very grateful for our speaker today.
Thank you. You're setting her up great. She's definitely going to have actions for us.
Hi, good morning. I'm Chris. Just letting folks know, my little dog Maeve is suffering. She had an attack of vertigo a number of days ago, which leaves her, well, it hit her in a number of ways, and she's making a lot of progress, but at this point, she's still not standing on her own. So it's tough to be a dog when you can't stand and deal with, the ADLs of daily living, as they say. So, she's still a plucky little girl, and I'm just hoping for the best. So keep her in your thoughts so she can join me on some more walks, which she's not doing at the moment.
From the photos I've seen on Facebook, she's a very sweet little dog. I just wanted to share that we had the celebration of my husband's life yesterday, And it was such an incredible experience for me. And it seemed for other people too. I cannot tell you how touched I was by what people had to say about him and their experience of having him in their life. So all I can say is thank you for this wonderful space in which that event could happen.
Hi, I'm Michael Carmen. I'm Robin and Bob's friend. I just wanted to also say I'm glad to be here. I've been here a couple times, another time with Robin. It's a wonderful place, and the service was wonderful, and it's like ripples in a pond, you know, it just keeps enriching and going out further and further. So thank you to the church for hosting this, and thank you, Robin, for sharing your life and your wonderful husband with us.
Is that your name tag you have on the jacket?
It is. It fell off.
There we go. Yeah.
It says that I'm Michael Carmen.
Okay. All right. Very good. Yeah, I saw. There we go. Perfect. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Claudette, and I won't be here next week because my grandson will be graduating from college. He's graduating from UMass Elmhurst. I'll be in Massachusetts for the weekend. Some of you may remember him when he was a little baby, visiting here. Now he's a grown man, graduating college. I'm really proud and excited. Thanks.
Get right there. You reminded me that I was last week in DC where my daughter graduated from American. She has a master's in international relations, conflict resolution, and peace building. Is she a Unitarian or what? I mean, come on.
Hey, good morning. I'm Dave. Since I got here as we're doing announcements, I didn't even think to announce this, but Eric and John and Jade aren't here because Eric and John have a concert. I have to get the time right. It's right down the street at Christ Church at, if anyone's interested, let me know. I can't remember if it's 2:30. That's when it is. So with Sanchi Barbro's, all of her string students. So if anyone's interested, I don't know. Just thought, and that's why they're not here this morning because Eric and John have been running around so much. They needed to their beauty rest so they're ready for the concert. So yeah.
So that's today at 2:30. Okay, anybody else? Oh, more. Okay, and then Ben, then your job. Hold on, I always forget that part. Here you go.
I'm Kevin. As many of you know, my wife Carolyn, they discovered cancer about 5 months ago. And this Monday, she had a port installed. And this Thursday, this week, she'll have her second round of chemotherapy. So please keep her in your thoughts and prayers. But while she's been mostly lying in bed, she did organize our summer concert series, which starts next weekend. Saturday, 4 p.m. at Zion Lutheran, 505 Watchog. Sunday, 4 p.m. at the Conference House, 7455 Highland. Free concerts, outdoors. Bring a blanket or a seat, and heck, bring a picnic dinner. It'll be a lot of fun. It's free. Bring the whole family. And our community choir, which meets over here at Snug Harbor, will be joining for several pieces, and including two of our people in our choir that sing in that group also.
And now, Ben, I think it's, go ahead.
Susan O'Callahan says John Walker had a successful heart operation. We hope to travel to Nebraska Thursday to visit family. And she says, yay, Julia.
Thank you. We are grateful for all the joys and sorrows we have heard that have been shared in our community, and for all those that have gone unspoken. May the attention and care we give each other and those beyond this space remind us that we are not alone. We will now pause for meditation. I will offer a quote to focus our meditation and then ring the bell. At that point, I invite you to begin the meditation with 3 deep breaths. After a few minutes, I will ring the bell again to mark the end of our time. Today's quote by David Scott is as follows: "Compassion for others is the keel that keeps our ship sailing, balanced and gentle against the angry winds of judgment and indifference." I now have a reading to share with you. My name is Dino Caraselli. I'm incarcerated at Sing Sing. I'm serving 65 years to life for attempted robbery and attempted aggravated assault. Since then, I've educated myself and the taxpayers have paid for my rehabilitation. But all of those efforts are wasted because I will die in prison long before my first chance of parole in 2055. America affords its people with the most human and civil liberties, yet we pack people away in cages forever without a second chance after establishing that we have rehabilitated ourselves. I know I did wrong and it was necessary to punish me, but with age, knowledge, and humility, I have changed. My youth is gone. No matter how much I wish it, I can't go back and change my past. I'm ashamed and truly sorry for the anguish I've caused my victims. My immediate family is all gone, and I never got to apologize. I participated in numerous rehabilitation programs. I currently work as a peer specialist for a community-oriented reentry program. I work with mental health and prison staff, assisting people with mental health issues to prepare for their release. The Department of Corrections is warehousing an elderly population of educated people who have rehabilitated themselves. These people are just wasting away in dungeons at a cost of millions. They could be out in society, mentoring troubled youth. I beg the legislature to allow more incarcerated New Yorkers fair and meaningful opportunities for release, based upon who they are today. We will now take an offertory. We know it is the gifts of all of us that help support our ability to thrive and gather. For those attending in person, we invite you to drop your offering into the collection plate as it comes around. For those online, links and instructions will be posted in the chat. You can mail us a check, you can donate to PayPal. Please give as generously to us as you can. Our offering will now be gratefully received. Please join us now in singing hymn number 168, which is One More Step, and this time it really is in the gray hymnal.
Please stand and join us.
One more step, we will take one more step, till there is peace for us, and everyone will take one more step. One more word, we will say one more word, till every word is heard by everyone. We'll say one more word, one more prayer. We will say one more prayer, till every prayer is shared by everyone. We'll say one more prayer. One more song, we will sing one more song, till every song is sung by everyone. We'll sing one more song.
Anisah Sabur-Mumin is a regional New York City organizer, community organizer for a campaign called Release Aging People in Prisons, RAPP. She's going to tell us about her journey to get here today. So I want to invite her to the podium now. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having me this morning. Thank you so much, Sarah, for inviting me. My name is Anisah Sabur. The Mumin is hyphenated. I don't use it a lot, but it's fine to put it on paper. But I just like Anisah Sabur. And Anisah is fine. So I just want to say, first of all, I am really overwhelmed just being in this space with you all, to know that you all have the compassion for people who have made a mistake, but should not have to live out the rest of their life in that one mistake. And I say that because you're looking at a person who made a mistake in their life, who took a wrong path. And that path took me down the path of injustice. And I made some mistakes in my life, none that I'm proud of, but I served my time. I rehabilitated myself, and I say I rehabilitated myself because many people do. Our system doesn't offer a lot of resources and programming to help an individual identify the problem, address the problem, and then remove themselves from that problem and hold themselves accountable, right? So I'm here today to talk a lot about people who are aging in prison. Right? And I say that aging, I specifically talk about it because when someone is incarcerated, they age accelerates, right? If you're in the community, you have access to fresh fruits, vegetables, a good diet, fresh air, walks, bike rides, exercise. They say they provide these things for people who are incarcerated, but it's not always true. If you have not been incarcerated and have not lived the experience, you really don't know how people are truly suffering on the inside. So I've been home since 2004, and I've done 16 years of service to our state by being incarcerated for that long and being on parole supervision. And so some of the things that we found is that being on parole supervision is just as bad as being incarcerated. But it's also given some people an inch of freedom being able to re-engage in community, re-engage and become employed, become educated, be in loving families. But we got a system that thinks that some people should never be returned to their communities, and it's not right. They weren't given a life sentence. The story that Sarah just read is an individual whose sentence was sentenced really, really harshly. No one died. He didn't take a life. You know, people look at the scripture and they say an eye for an eye. That is not the way we really want our systems to work. And there's no death penalty in New York. However, we do have death by incarceration. And I say that because people will spend decades inside of our prison system without any chance of returning to community after doing so much rehabilitation, so much self-accountability work. And so we are fighting right now to do two things in New York State. One is to change the way our parole system works. So I don't know how much you guys know, but I'm gonna talk a little bit about the court system and the parole system. So you go to court, you get sentenced, you can get a determinate sentence, which means that you get a flat number. You can get 5 years incarcerated, you can get 50 years incarcerated, and that's your time. Or you can get sentenced to a 5-year sentence to a 10-year sentence, or a 15-year sentence to a 25-year sentence. You get an intermediate, right? But when you reach that minimum number, you are supposed to be eligible for what they call a parole hearing. That hearing is to see who you are now and what you have done to rehabilitate yourself, to hold yourself accountable for the mistakes you made and the offensive you had caused, any harm you caused to the community. However, our present system doesn't look at people for who they are today. They look at what they've done to get them incarcerated, and they get stuck there. And so they hold you accountable over and over and over again for the one thing that you can never change, and that is the offense that you've committed. But they put you in because they say you're going to be incarcerated for this amount of time to get yourself together and to move away from that behavior. And when you as a person work towards doing that, they don't see it. No matter how good your institutional record is, no matter how much change you put into yourself, how you present yourself, they get to the nature of the offense and they get stuck. And people stay there and they begin to age there and they begin to die in our systems. So one thing I want you to keep in mind is every 3 days in New York State alone, we lose an elder. We learned that the youngest age that has passed away for an elder is 58 years old. We know at 58, we're still thriving and vibing out in the communities, right? But inside, we begin to deteriorate. We are fighting the Department of Corrections because in their own reporting, they report that the youngest elder is 55 years old. That means at 55, you start to age in accelerated ways. Body breakdowns, organ breakdowns, every ailment that we get at 65 and 70, people 55 were getting while they're incarcerated because of poor eating habits, poor exercise habits, poor medical assistance and doctors, and not being able to see specialists for things that people age for. So New York State has been doing this for decades, and people have been in our system for decades. And every time they go to parole board, when they reach their minimum, they sentence them to 2 more years. 2 more years, 2 more years. No matter what a person has done to hold themselves accountable and to change the behavior, our parole system does not see it. One of the reasons why it doesn't see it is because they're all former law enforcement, former judges, former correction officers, former prosecutors who sit on this hearing board. It's made up of 3 commissioners, and these commissioners all come from backgrounds that are punitive. And they don't see people as people who can change their lives. And I say this because people look at me, and I normally don't tell people I'm formally incarcerated right away. I just talk about some of the work, right? But if you knew me back then and you know me now from me speaking, you would say, this woman was never incarcerated. There's no way she could be. But it's true. We do change. People find ways to rehabilitate themselves while they're inside. They find ways to give back to people who are coming in, to mentor them, to really help. The brother was talking about it. So many people have designed programs that the department then adapted to their programming, especially around people who have caused harm, and how we then address the harm we've caused, and how do we go back and restore that harm, right? By bringing people back into the communities and showing that we are rehabilitated, to share with younger people ways to divert them from the system. So there's been a lot of work done. And just a little bit about me, I'm gonna say, I came home in 2004, and I went right into an organization that was helping women who were incarcerated really try to find their voices, find housing, find jobs. So I started mentoring people right away. I was a peer specialist, right? Really trying to help people navigate the systems that they have to after being incarcerated for some time. From that, I went into policy advocacy, right? Really trying to help change some of the policies that impacted people who were coming home. Like, we didn't have enough housing. We didn't have enough substance and mental health services in our communities that could really help people once they were released. So we fought to get changes and get resources put back into the communities that could help those individuals. The last thing I did, I was working with people who was coming out on parole, and this was men and women, in what they call a restorative method. We had what they call reentry courts. We would meet once a week. We talk about what the issue was, what they needed, how do we meet the needs of the community, how do we give back to the communities that they harmed, actually getting people to come together in what they call restorative circles and talk to the people that they've caused harm to, if they were still around, or their family members, to say, you know, I apologize. I realized I was in a state of oblivion when I was using substances, and I stole from you, or I might have harmed your family in another way. I might have taken a life from this community, and being apologetic and accountable. And those are the things that really helped me to elevate and give back to my community. Now what I'm doing is really organizing community members to see that this can happen for other people who are currently on the inside. One of the bills that we really talk about is the, the Fair and Timely Parole Act. When we say fair and timely, we mean that when a person reaches that minimum number, that they are having a fair access to parole, not just looking at the nature of the crime, but also looking at the person for who they are today. All that they've done while they were incarcerated. How are they connecting to the community on the outside while they're incarcerated? How are they giving back to younger people coming into the incarceral system to really show them how to re-enter society without reoffending? So that bill really speaks to, how do we get a fair and just parole commissioner board, right? Like moving some of the people who are punitive off of these boards and getting people of compassion, people who believe in second chances, people who believe in redemption, to actually come and sit on those boards and talk to individuals about who they are today. What have they done while they was inside? What do they expect to give back to the community, and how could they actually do that? What kind of community supports do they have? One of the questions they always ask us is, well, where was these elders go? So we are connected to organizations across the state that service elders, right? Who are willing to open up spaces to say they can live here. We can help them, you know, reintegrate by teaching them the electrical systems and the electronic systems and all of the things that they would need to be able to survive the last, whatever, how many years they have left, in a good way, not a punitive way, right? And so we are really trying to focus on changing the commissioner's status, right? Those who are punitive, giving them a cap, because our commissioners are appointed by our governor. And it's just so hard to get the governor to see that you need to have people on these commissioner boards to be able to see and hear people for who they are, not just what they've done, not excluding any nature of the crime, but actually knowing this person did this, right? But what are they doing now? Our system is supposed to be a system of rehabilitation. We're supposed to put people away for a set amount of time to actually help them to rehabilitate themselves so that they won't do this again, that this will not be a reoccurring instance for these people. But you're not giving them the opportunity to show you that they can do it without reoffending if you never release them. So you are holding people over their parole date time because you don't think that they can change, although they've shown you everything. They've gotten degrees, they've helped younger people, they've done everything they could in this system to show you that they are really human beings and should be treated like human beings. But our system doesn't see it. So this law would really change the dynamic of who sits on that board and how people can actually have a fair parole hearing, giving them the opportunity to show themselves for who they are today. The other piece of legislation is saying that if an individual is 55 years or older, which is the Department of Corrections, age, right, that they should have access also to a fair and just hearing, right, and should not be resentenced, because that's what it is. They're resentencing them for the nature of their crime, right? Especially people who have caused serious harm in communities, but realize that they caused this harm, holding themselves accountable, showing remorse, but also building up themselves and others inside and making these community connections on the outside. So RAPP has a whole member base of incarcerated individuals who are actually talking to us, sharing experiences with us so that we can then share those experiences in the community. So people can know that's where Sarah got the letter from. We've done letter writing campaigns with incarcerated people to our electeds, right? We've used their experiences in advocacy in Albany, just really to show that people who have gotten out after and come with us to Albany to share those experiences, to say, see, here I am, this is how I'm living, I'm back in my community, I'm doing the best I can to give back, I'm a tax-paying citizen. It can happen. I'm mentoring young people. It can happen, right? But these are some of the things that our system is not designed to do. And I'm with Julia, like, we don't need jails and prisons. What we need is restorative methods. There are ways that we can go into communities when harm is caused and repair that harm with healing. Really getting people to address the behavior and finding the resources needed to keep that behavior from being repeated. So I think I've said enough, but there's also something I want to say. I'm going to say one more thing, and I don't know how much time I have, but I can talk for a very long time. But I just really want us to understand that, you know, a lot of people are in prison because they're innocent. And I don't know how much you know about the Innocence Project and a lot of the overturned convictions we've gotten over the past few years when we had people who were compassionate in our district attorneys' races. People who really looked into why was this kid at 17 years old incarcerated and spent 32, 34, 38 years in prison for an offense he did not commit or she did not commit. Because there are women also who are also facing these same issues, right? And so we are actually supporting the legislation of wrongful conviction as well. And so the same thing here is to really take a look at people's cases when they say that they are wrongfully convicted. Our Innocence Project is overwhelmed with cases. They don't have a lot of attorneys. It's a nonprofit legal entity. And we are asking our legislatures to put into law where our court systems would then be ones to pick up some of that weight, to really look at a case before sentencing someone, really doing the due diligence to make sure that this person is not being coerced by making them take a plea bargain by offering them a longer sentence. And that's what happens to a lot of young people who do not understand the law. They're plea bargained out to take these long, extensive sentences, right? Or these short sentences intermediately saying, okay, we'll give you a 5 to 15. But knowing that at 5 years, they will never be returned to the community because they'll constantly be incarcerated over and over again by the parole board with denials. And so these are some of the things that the agency that I work on. And we're looking at, I was listening to you talk, Sister Claudia, about Pamela Smart, who is a woman who is incarcerated, and she's been incarcerated for 32, going on 33 years this year. And I had the opportunity to sit down with her a couple of weeks ago and listen to a project that she was putting together for a theological class. And it was so impactful that she realized that, like, I'm wholeheartedly accountable for the act that I committed, but I still think the sentence was too harsh. And that's what happened to a lot of people, especially young people. When they make these mistakes, they're misguided, peer pressure, and a lot of them don't even commit any real harm. When I say real harm, meaning taking someone's life or closely taking someone's life, but causing just small infractions to the community, that we need to see them still as people and find ways to actually not over-sentence them. These harsh sentences has caused so many people to deteriorate in our systems, and some of them to die. And so today what we're asking is, we have two asks of the community. We have a phone to action tool, which is a link that we can send out to the community. And if you click on it, it'll go straight to every elected in New York State and ask them to sign on to our legislation. The other thing is, I have a sign-on letter specifically for the elected in this district. Scarla. Thank you. I can never say her name right. There's two names, and it's a sign-on letter, and I have a copy of it, and I'll pass it around later during coffee hour. If folks are so willing to read through it and sign on to it, we would greatly appreciate it. And let me just say this, that both of these legislations are really close to finish, at the finish line. That's what we call it, at the finish line. In our New York State Assembly, we need 76 co-sponsors on our legislation. Both of our bills right now are at 69 and 70. In the New York State Senate, we need 32. On one of our bills, we have 32 co-sponsors. On the other bill, we have 31. So we are really close. And it's not a hard ask, right? And it's just some electeds don't believe, I say, in redemption, because when they read the legislation and know that it's really giving people just a fair opportunity to be seen for who they are, and not actually just opening the floodgates and everybody can get out of prison once they go to parole. That's not what we're asking. We're asking to see us as people. Give us that opportunity that we need to be heard. When you go to a parole hearing, it could last anywhere from 5 minutes to 8 minutes. And they have basically two questions, right? One of the first questions they ask you is, tell us about what happened on October 10, 2020, whatever the date is, right? And they stay there. And that's the majority of you trying to explain to them what happened. And they're going through your record and they're looking at it. And didn't this happen? And didn't this happen? And didn't this happen? That was then. And then they asked, what would happen if the person that you, whatever, is sitting right here? What would you say to them? And it needs to be something like, you're remorseful, I apologize, I'm holding myself accountable. And that's it. And that could happen in anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes tops. But if you are someone who is of compassion, you would begin by looking at saying, we see you've been here for 35 years. Tell us what you've done in those 35 years. And go backwards, right? Don't start when I came in and get stuck there, but start from where I am and move the timeline backwards. And try to help me understand why I was sentenced to 25 to life or 25 to 50, And here now, almost 40 years in, and I'm still here. And I'm showing you this is all I've done. Associates. Some people come in without a GED, associates, bachelor's, master's, PhD, whatever they can get while they're there, right, over the years, because we had that opportunity at one time for education. But when they see people really becoming educated and getting out and not coming back, they snatched away the education opportunity because they said you can't incarcerate somebody and give them a free education. But why not? It's rehabilitation. It helps them to rehabilitate themselves. So we know that now our system doesn't want us to rehabilitate. And Sarah said it, like the percentage of people that are incarcerated at accelerated rates, right, sentences, compared to people who are people of color, compared to people who are white, right? It shows that we get different sentences, and it's harsher for people of color. It's harsher for young people, right? You give these young people these long sentences, and their brain haven't even fully developed. But they don't look at all of that, right? And so this is why we're pushing and fighting and really asking for community support in getting our electeds to see and hear from people who are directly impacted. So I'm going to say thank you for listening to me. I really, really appreciate the time and the attention that everyone in this room has given me and given to our campaign. And I look forward to talking more with you during the lunch hour. Thank you.
Please join us now in singing our closing hymn, which is number 121, We'll Build a Land, in the gray hymnal.
Please stand. If you sit too long, you'll get stiff.
We'll build a
I invite you now to join me in extinguishing our chalice. You can find the words to the affirmation in the order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. For these we carry in our hearts until we are together again. The closing words are called Go Forth in Simplicity by Sam Trumbore. Go forth in simplicity. Find and walk the path that leads to compassion and wisdom, that leads to happiness, peace, and ease. Welcome the stranger and open your heart to a world in need of healing. Be courageous before the forces of hate. Hold and embody a vision of the common good that serves the needs of all people.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, a little light spiritual called Nobody Knows the Trouble I've Seen. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Nobody knows my sorrow. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Glory, hallelujah. Sometimes I'm up, sometimes I'm down. Oh, yes, Lord. Sometimes I'm almost to the ground. Oh, yes, Lord. Oh, nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Nobody knows but Jesus. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Glory,
And so ends our service. Please join us in the parish hall now for hospitality. Thanks for signing a lot of stuff, right? You're not going to go into hospitality? Are you going to go? Okay. All right.